Hello, my name is Nolan Ritchie, and I would just like to share this game I've been working on. Um, since I have to call it something, for now I'm calling it Physics Freedom, because you have the freedom to create your own levels, like a sandbox kind of scenario. You just build it yourself, build your own levels, share your levels, that kind of thing. Might as well get right into demonstrating rather than me trying to explain. So I have a blank, fresh level here prepared, and there is basically three different kind of user modes. One being your kind of a level editor mode where you are placing new objects with your various options here, rotating objects, choosing a color, and some other more advanced options. So your level editor mode kind of. And the other is, I guess it's called a mouse joint mode, where you can just use your mouse to click and drag objects. And the third mode being your character control mode, because you want to have a character to interact with the world you're creating. The only character we have right now is this rocket ship with a grappling hook and a cannon. And so those are the three modes. The two are pretty straightforward, but the level editor mode here is quite complex. So by default, everything is set, I believe, this way, more or less. And so the first buttons on the top here are just your selecting object buttons, next, previous. We have some various just geometrical shapes, as well as some special objects that do special things. Those are the first two buttons. The other is just rotating buttons. You actually have keyboard shortcuts for most of those options in that menu, such as left and right arrows to scroll through objects, up and down to change the rotation of the object you're going to place. And you can choose a color for every object. Darker colors are more dense, so they're heavier and just have a higher effect. Even special objects, such as this, what did I call it? A vacuum ball, so it sucks things towards it. Just like the higher dense objects, the darker colors are denser. The darker special just have a higher effect. So this has a pulling effect. So black color has the highest pulling power, while yellow has the weakest pulling power. The color density rating, as I've called it, affects special objects as well. So these two buttons are to toggle through the colors. So the next buttons are reduce constant torque, add constant torque. Constant torque means that the item you're about to enter will constantly have torquing force added to it, spinning force. So if I take this circle, add 60 newtons per second constant torque, it will every frame add that much torque to it, and it will basically roll because of the torque being added to it. Usually best to put it back to 0 after you're done using it, because you'll forget that it's on. And the plus and minus keys in your number pad can also add and remove constant torque value that you have selected. These three options over to the right are just kind of general settings. You can toggle gravity on or off, and when gravity's not on, things just, float around. Turn it back on, and of course things fall to the ground once again. Invulnerability toggle. Invulnerable means the shape, if it's set to 1, then it's like true, 0 is false, so objects are invulnerable. This circle that I place here, it is invulnerable. It's always going to be there. Can't break it. But if I were to put invulnerable to 0, that means they are vulnerable, and I can make something that will be breakable. So these rectangles are vulnerable, so we can, for example, take an invulnerable block and use our hand tool and smash it into these vulnerable pieces. When a piece takes damage, the more damage it's taken, the more it flickers, just to kind of display the HP until it finally gets destroyed. Obviously more force does more damage, and denser, more heavier objects are harder to destroy than lighter objects. Friction value is somewhat self-explanatory. It's the friction value of the object you're going to enter. Less friction, object's more slippery, it will slide. More friction, it will kind of stick to things more and just provide more resistance when it's moving against something else, and stop quicker, such as things like that. Now, the rest of the options here are basically options to join shapes together to create joints or weld things together. So for example, if we turn sticky to toggle sticky value to show as 1, that means the object you create is going to stick with the first object it comes in contact with. Now the floor of the level does not count, so right now this object here is still sticky. The next thing it touches, it will stick to it, and it will stick in a welding, as a weld type, so it just exactly as it was when it touched it, it stays that way. The other two options, so the other option other than weld is rotate, which means once whatever sticks to whatever, it will be not stuck in place, it will be rotatable where the joint gets created. So for example, see how the block, it's still stuck, but it can rotate freely. What you can do with this kind of thing is say, I'm not sure if I mentioned yet or not, but if when we're placing items, we have normal and in place options. usually normal is selected. But another shortcut to put something in place is to use just the right click. Left click is a normal dynamic object. Right click is static, so it doesn't not affected by outward forces or gravity or anything colliding into it. Still can be collided into, but it doesn't move. So going back over here, what we can do with these sticky modes is say we can put a small circle or square with a sticky value of 1 up in the air here, and right click to make it stay in place. Now whatever touches this will stick to it and it will rotate. So I can then say take a long stick here, and I can even add some constant torque so it will spin, and click it right on the sticky circle and it will stick to it. Guess I did not add enough constant force, so we can use this delete object to delete that. Delete this again. Re-add our sticky thing in place here. And then find our long plank again. We don't need sticky on because this one's already sticky. The circle is, and add way more torquing force. More heavier objects need more torque force to spin at the same speed, basically. So now we're gonna stick this, and it should rotate in place there. The force is constantly added, so it basically will slowly pick up in speed. And that's a nice obstacle for your for your rocket ship to avoid. So that was the sticky types, rotate and weld explained, but we also have this option of where the item is going to stick to it. Is it going to stick right at the point of contact, which is contact point, or do we want it to stick in the center of the object? So where that might come in useful, I can show you. I'm gonna just build myself see, we have torque on. I want to turn that off, set it back to 0. Just build myself a little workbench here, and I'm going to make something here. Put sticky value of 2. Sticky value of 2 means that it will stick to the next 2 items that touches it. So on this first contact, this object is still sticky one more time, so it will still stick to the next thing that touches it. Now, I didn't want this to be set to rotate. I want it to be set to weld and contact point for now. So I'm welding together myself a car here. So these are both still sticky. There, so I've just made myself a rectangle here. And now I'm going to go back to it and attach some wheels to it. So for wheels, I don't want it to stick like this. I want it to stick right in the center here. So that's what object center means. So if I put rotate, stick at object center, sticky value of 1, add some torque. Now this wheel will stick at the center and it will rotate freely. So as you can see, I've basically just created a cheap car which should be able to go and drive on its own. Oh, if we were not at the rightmost limit of the level already, it would go anyway. Oh, and I've just impaled my car. So much for that example. So let's just delete that thing so we can move our car. Delete, and get my car over here so we can watch it drive. Because my wheels only spin one way. So there we go. Let's start at a stop and just watch it pick up speed. Probably would have been better for me to pick a higher friction value for my car's wheels. I'm going to get this out of the way so it can actually pick up some speed. Be sure it can run over that circle. So I've just used my sticky options to make a car basically. I welded the body together and then had the tires stick in the center and be able to rotate. And there goes my cheap car. Now, these options down here are basically just some quick shortcuts. So normal and in place, we've already used those because there's normal is just a normal left click, and in place there's a shortcut by just clicking with your right mouse button. So this one is just a shortcut to quickly anchor something in place and allow rotation. So for example, we can just take a large rectangle and have it, torque is already set to 300 newtons per second. So anchor in place, anchor to the middle, we just click and it stays in place and rotates. Anchor in place top is very similar. It just uses the anchor point on the very top of the object like this. So now it's kind of like a swinging door. And rope anchor, it basically means it's just gonna dangle there from a rope. So oops, I had the sticky set to 1, so it's stuck there. So let's go back to normal placement type, find our delete object, just delete that so it can move freely and demonstrate that it swings on the rope, so it's a rope anchor. You could do the same thing by just playing with your 3 sticky options over here, most of these anyway, but these are just kind of some shortcuts. So with all these options, we can do a lot of different things, build a lot of different things. For example, here is one. So we've built a what looks to be a lemon car by welding those yellow pieces together and then putting wheels, circles as rotation joints with torque on each side. And a few ramps entered in static mode for all those brown sticks, just to give it some where to drive and drive back and forth. And for example, we can do something like this. These red objects here are just like emulating wind, so anything that goes in the white border will be pushed by the red thing blowing wind. So as all the circles roll down the ramps, they will eventually come to the bottom point here, where they'll just be blown back up to the top and continue in this endless cycle. And what else? So we can I've built what don't really know what to call it. A large structure here of just items stacked on each other. And these are all vulnerable objects, so I could simply use my rocket ship to destroy it, watch it tumble down. And the best part is I can exit without saving and just go back and break it one more time. What else? Here's an example level where there is no gravity. It's space. And in the center of that level we have 3 circles orbiting an attract ball. Because there's no gravity, they literally just keep going around forever. Oh, my rocket ship has entered in an orbit here. mess around with this, you'll notice it's actually quite difficult to get something in a perfect orbit where the distance is the same all the way around. Okay, and where were we? So, one other feature, I guess you could call it here, is there is no button for it here, but if you press the R key on your keyboard, you can actually create invisible objects so that you can, say, make an invisible floor. I just created an invisible floor that I can get up on top of here. I can't find it. Floor. Oh, that's right. I need to put it in, use right click to statically put the floor in the same spot. And the purpose of that is I can put a background image such as this and create an invisible floor areas appropriate as per the background image, and you can create a level such as Some of the standard textures for this level have been overwritten with, as you can see, textures more appropriate to the scenery. And why not take a minute to show you some of the special objects. We have this one, the wind blaster. It's still invisible because I didn't press R. Those things. Sticky blocks. Shoot sticky blocks. Literally, for example, they'll stick to the rocket, and as you can see now I'm kind of stuck. They eventually expire on their own, delete on their own over time. And here's a puller. You can see the stickies are pulling in this direction now with these puller. We have large cannons, smaller cannons. Add some vulnerable objects here for the cannon to destroy over time. We have bombs, which just kind of self-explanatory, they blow up. And the portal where things go in one portal, come out the next. Normally you should make the portal static, otherwise it will just consume everything and fall out of the level. But I forgot to do that. Here's a level with just low gravity and some portals. So yeah, that's basically it for now. Just let me know if you think I'm onto something interesting here, or maybe it's not quite as glamorous as I think it is.